Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Unfold the Future by the band The Flower Kings.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
First time encountering the Flower Kings on this channel, this has definitely been a ride and I have a lot to say about this album, and you might not be happy about what I have to say about it, but you know what, that's my opinion, I'm sorry, but I'm letting you know in advance. Anyway, here's some of my favorite bits from this album. Only 3 favorite bits out of this entire album. Now normally this would be a fine thing, you know, 3 favorite bits, that's good for any normal album, but this is not a normal album, and I'm referring strictly to its runtime, which clocks in at 144 minutes. If you happen to remember, when I did the video reviewing English Electric Full Power with Notes reviews, I thought that that would be the longest album on the list, but alas, I was proven wrong today. Now there's really no way to bend this around. Looking at 3 favorite bits from this entire album, they make up about 30 seconds out of 2 hours and 24 minutes. That's like 0.3% of the entire album. That's nothing, and I would like to rant about this, but I'll do it later on in the video. But firstly, this is a new band on the series, and the right thing to do, of course, would firstly to introduce them to you all. So the Flower Kings, a band that comes from the gifted land that gives on giving, of course, the Kingdom of Sweden. Now, of course, I'm saying the Kingdom of Sweden because when it comes to progressive rock music, I've been proven time and time again how many great bands and great albums and great songs and great everything that has to do with prog has come from that land. But anyway, in 1993, the ex-Kaipa member called Ronnie Stott was working on his solo album titled The Flower King. You see where I'm going with this? And helping him produce his own album and play on it, he had several very talented members coming from different backgrounds in music and especially progressive rock music, and together they managed to create an album called The Flower King, and together they managed to create this album called The Flower King and later formed together to be The Flower Kings. Now, the original album, The Flower King, was actually released as a Ronnie Stott solo album, and it is until today considered to be his best solo work. And from that point onwards, the band started releasing their own material, with their first album being called Back to the World of Adventures in 1995. Now, specifically, I've never heard that album. Again, this is my first ever acquaintance with the Flower Kings, but what I will have to say about that album in particular is that I really love its cover. It has that early 19s Internet Explorer site vibe to it, and I just really love that. And from that point onwards, the band went to this big album releasing spree, releasing an album basically every year with a few missing ones here and there, and a hiatus between the years of 2014 and 2018. And in the beginning of their career, they didn't really worry about flexing and showing off their muscles by creating some really long pieces of music in the form of double CDs, and they released not 1, not 2, but 3 of them at the beginning, with the 3rd one being the album we're reviewing today called Unfold the Future. Now, let me get back to the point in which I opened this review up with. You see, whenever a creator usually creates music, they want it to be very good music that they like, and as well they also want it to fit in a certain time frame, usually limited by the medium upon which they want to release their music. Now, nowadays when you see digitalized music, it doesn't really have to be at any certain length because you can just upload anything online, but with CDs and vinyls it works differently. So if you want to release an album on a vinyl per se, you might want to do it around about 40 minutes minutes, and if you want to do so on CD, an hour would be just fine. But these guys developed a distinct fondness towards one of the longest contemporary mediums there is out there, which is a double CD, and they've produced them on a very consistent basis, which is really hard considering the fact that you want their entire runtime to be full of good and well written music. Now, I've never heard the album Stardust We Are or Flower Power, which are both double CDs, but what I can say is that today's album features a lot of filler in it, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of filler in it. Now, I might be sounding harsh when saying this, but I really believe that, and I do believe that if you cut away all that filler and actually left the good music, you'd get an album which is around about 30 minutes to 40 minutes in length. And that's really funny to say considering the fact that this album has 2 tracks on it that are almost or at this time frame, with the first one and the last one being so. And in this instance, let's talk about the first one, called The Truth Will Set You Free, which is a 30-minute opener. Now, this song in its essence was my introduction to the Flower Kings. Whatever it introduced me with was what I was initially going to think about this band. Now, listening to this one, this is a huge epic of 30 minutes. That's a lot of time, and what I deduced from it is that these guys are basically just copying Yes. Now, the only difference I could really find from their sound to actually copying Yes was the fact that they didn't use regular bass but used a fretless bass, at least I think so. Now, not only did they copy them, which is really, I'm saying this hand on heart, really what it feels like, and I don't know how you can feel otherwise about it, it seemed like this song was a reinterpretation and sort of copying of the track that Yes did covering America by Simon and Garfunkel. When we moved on from this track onwards into the rest of the monolith that this album is, I found out that these guys weren't just Yes copycats. They did a lot of things, actually too many if I could say so myself. They're experimenting here with a lot of styles, a lot of sounds. They're copying different things. There are certain songs on here which sound like King Crimson and others which are definitely very Floydian, and I don't really know what to do with that information. This album just kind of reminded me of an album like Song for America by Kansas, in which the band basically tries everything they want to try and just see what sticks, and that's usually very fine, but the difference is of course that Kansas did it on their second album and these guys are doing it on their 7th. And I'm not saying that a band can change their sound through time, but usually when it's done this late in a band's career, it is usually done very gradually and with a lot of thought behind it, and not just trying to, do this, do that, do this and see what sticks, because that's just not what works in the long run. And I think that the reason, like deep down, why this bothers me honestly is because listening to this entire album, which is a really long album, there's a lot to explore in this album, I just felt like I didn't really learn what the Flower Kings sound was, and that's kind of disappointing because, getting into this band, a lot of people are talking about them, they're very popular, and I still can't tell you what these guys sound like. When I try to remember this album, I just don't remember anything. It's very much just filler and very much forgettable. But let's move on to a moment of brightness. I'm talking shit about this album and I know it's not nice, but it's true. But the thing is that inherently this album isn't that bad of an album. It consists of, okay to good to fair songs, and a lot of them being mediocre. But this album was never bad. I never suffered through any of these songs on here. They were genuinely good, and I believe that listening to each and every one like individually at certain times wouldn't really be much of a burden, and even would be nice as some sort of background music. But what really took it down for me with this album had to be the long runtime. There is no justification for 144 minutes of runtime on here. There's really nothing that fun about it. There's so much filler. There's actually so much filler that I would call certain songs on here filler from start to end, and that's putting aside of course just the things that happen in between sections in the individual tracks. There was however one moment from this entire album that I actually do remember, that I won't forget for sure, and that moment came in the song called Silent Inferno at around about 8 minutes I believe, in which they actually sampled the meme of I've fallen and I can't get up. Just take a look.
I've fallen and I can't get up. I've fallen and I can't get up.
But yeah, overall, I can't help to remember from this album that this is just an absurdly long album with no justification for it. But if there's one good thing that happened when listening to this one, I didn't know that this album was so long when I got into it, and it's in fact longer than English Electric by Big Big Train, so I definitely would have been, anxious of getting into it and listening to it, but because I didn't know, I just started listening to it, and I noticed that it was really long, but I just kind of felt obligated to finish it at the same day, so I did that and I got that behind me. And normally in these types of albums, I do usually tell you all that, I didn't like this music all that much, but if you like one song from here, you're gonna love the rest. But it just isn't the case with this one, because the songs on here are so varied, so different. There's a lot of songs that seem to copy other bands, then you have some jazz songs on here and some blues songs on here and straight rock and so many different things. So honestly, I don't know really how can someone just listen to this entire album and say that each and every track on here is perfect in their own opinion. Of course, I'm well aware that people that refer to certain albums as being perfect albums don't necessarily love and think that each and every track is perfect, but it has to be close enough, and this is an album which I really can't fathom how someone would just think that everything on it is close enough to being perfect. But yeah, this is definitely not the last time I'm gonna listen to the Flower Kings, don't worry, but I think that next time I'll approach them, I'd like to do so with a shorter album overall. The only thing I can really see when I look at this cover is just the big brain meme and the Reddit upvote button. I don't know what it is, it's just what it looks like. And I really don't have a lot to say about this cover. I know that the Flower Kings have some really neat covers to their name, but unfortunately this is just, the mediocre ones. I guess it's not as bad as the other ones. I've seen the cover for Stardust We Are. It is so early 2000, it actually hurts me. But yeah, this isn't a very interesting cover. I don't know what it has to do with the music, but the music is so all over the place, then I guess this cover kind of fits. So normally, if I scored this album based on the songs alone, I would give this album a pretty respectable 7 out of 10, but unfortunately this isn't the case because this is so long and it's such an arduous album that I'm taking its rating down by a notch and giving it a rating of 6 out of 10, basically sparing it from the ever-looming 5. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to The 7th House by IQ, the first time we are encountering this band as well. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wan and Rist of Kings and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.